Last night I did a whole lot of studying in the Bible about the Messiah, the servant in Isaiah, thinking about John 1. And I swear, Christians need to stop starting with the New Testament and creating doctrines and go back to the Old Testament and see what God said was going to happen so that you can understand what the New Testament is saying. Because the promises don't begin in the New Testament, they become in the Old. And when I was studying last night, and I'm thinking about how the isles will wait on his Torah, he's going to set mishpat, judgment in the earth. God gave him to be a light to the nations. And over in Isaiah 51, it says, a Torah will proceed from me, and I will make my mishpat a light to the nations. When it comes down to it, this is God's word. God's Torah is God's word. God's mishpat is God's word. God's statutes, ordinances is God's word. God's commandments is God's word. And if you would build a foundation off the Torah, God said to Moses in Exodus 4:12 that I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall do. And then in verse 16 says, and you shall put work in his mouth, Aaron's mouth, and I will be with your mouth and his mouth. And in verse 16 he says, he will be a spokesperson for you, and you will be God for him. And in Exodus 7:1, when God gives Moses as God to Pharaoh, this is an appointed position. So when the word becomes flesh, let's go back to it. In John 1:1, the word was toward God. There was a directional relationship between the word and God. And the word was God. This word is in the category of God because it's God's word. Now God's word, which was directional toward God, became flesh, which means God appointed a man to be his word. To be his word, just as Moses was. And that's why there's a contrast in John 1:17. The law was given through Moses. Dia, the channel of an act, agency. Moses was the instrument. The Torah was given through Moses. Grace and truth became through Messiah. You understand? If you guys would go back into the Old Testament and see what the role of God's Messiah was to be, and stop starting with the new, you would understand everything about John 1. But no, for some reason people don't do that.